I watched in disbelief as the flames devoured everything in its path. My family's vineyard, a place where generations had poured their hearts into, was now nothing more than a distant memory consumed by the wildfire's ferocious hunger. I could feel the heat against my skin, the smoke burning my lungs, but it was nothing compared to the emptiness inside me. My parents weren't concerned about me, not even for a second. They were too busy protecting a bronze sculpture they'd bought for $250,000 Ascension. It didn't matter that my life, my memories, my future were crumbling to ash. They chose that statue over their own daughter. The look in their eyes as they ignored my screams like I wasn't even worth saving left me frozen in disbelief. As the fire raged, I realized I had no one left. No home, no family, nothing. I was truly alone. With nowhere else to turn, I reached for the one person who might understand. The boy I grew up with, the boy who'd become a billionaire. I called him not knowing what to expect, but hoping for something, anything. When he answered on the first ring, his 2 words changed everything. He said, "I'm coming." I pulled up to their mansion, the place that used to feel like home, but now it felt like a foreign land, one where I no longer belonged. The pristine driveway stretched before me, leading to the grand entrance that had always symbolized their success. My heart pounded as I knocked on the door, my mind racing with what I was about to face. The moment my father opened it, I could see it in his eyes, the frustration, the inconvenience of it all. "Jessica, what are you doing here?" His voice was flat, almost rehearsed, like he was already annoyed by my presence. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat, that familiar ache creeping back into my chest. "You can't stay with us," he said, stepping aside to let me in, but only just enough for me to feel like a burden. Not a daughter. It felt like my existence was more of a problem than anything else. I stood there, unable to believe the words I was hearing. He looked at me with a coldness. I had never imagined a stranger in the body of the man who used to care for me. "The vineyard is gone," I whispered, my voice cracking, barely able to hold back the flood of emotions rushing through me. "Everything is gone. I have nowhere else to go." I saw his face flicker for a moment, a brief flash of something concerned maybe, but it was gone just as quickly. Then my mother appeared, her face as perfectly composed as always. She didn't look tired from the fire or distressed by the situation. She was pristine, her hair styled with effortless perfection, standing in the doorway like an image of calm while the world around us was falling apart. She didn't rush to comfort me or even offer a shoulder. Instead, she spoke to me like I was one of her staff, someone she had to manage. "Darling, you have to understand our position," she said, her voice clinical, distant. The words felt like a slap in the face. My parents, the people who had raised me, or so I thought, had no care for the destruction of our family legacy, no grief for the loss of everything that had defined my life. "We have a brand to maintain," she continued, her tone dripping with condescension. "Having you here looking like that, it sends the wrong message to our investors and social circle." It was like a bomb had gone off in my chest. Brand management. That's what I was to her. A liability. Something that might damage her social stock. The anger bubbled up, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't let them see how much they had hurt me. My father nodded as if in agreement, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "It's a strategic decision, Jessica. Your trauma is a liability we simply cannot afford right now. It's messy." They didn't see me as their daughter. I wasn't the little girl they once held close. I wasn't family. I was just a mistake they couldn't manage. My knees felt weak. I couldn't breathe. "You're not our problem right now," they might as well have said. And with that, they dismissed me. Just like that, I was cast out, thrown away, a casualty of their cold corporate world. My mother's eyes narrowed as she saw how broken I looked, and she softened, but not with compassion. No, it was impatience. She sighed deeply and stepped back, vanishing for a moment only to return holding something small, a leather book. She didn't even look at me when she pressed it into my hands. "This survived," she muttered, her words hollow. "It was your grandfather's." She didn't tell me she was sorry. She didn't offer to help me. She just handed me a burned book, a final reminder of the family I once knew, and the family I now didn't. The door clicked behind me as I stood frozen on their porch. My heart was shattered, but the emptiness inside me felt worse than any loss I had ever known. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tell them how much they had failed me, how they had turned their backs on everything that mattered, but the words never came. Instead, I felt small and alone, with nothing but a burned journal in my hands. I turned around and walked back to my truck. The engine sputtered to life, the only thing familiar in a world that had become so alien. I drove away from their mansion, from the people who were supposed to love me, with no idea where I would go or what I would do. The world felt like it had fallen silent, but my mind was screaming, broken by the betrayal. The numbness wrapped itself around me like a thick fog, and as I drove, all I could think was, I didn't deserve this. As I sat there in my truck clutching my grandfather's scorched journal, my mind drifted back to a time when things were simpler, when I still believed in the family I had. I was 12, and the vineyard was my entire world. Back then, I didn't understand the way my parents saw it as a commodity or a status symbol. To me, the vineyard was alive, its spirit wrapped in the rich soil, the steady vines, and the hum of the land that felt like it was breathing with me. But it wasn't just me who saw it that way. There was Matthew. I don't know how we became friends, really. He was always around because my grandfather insisted on giving him a hand, but my parents never liked him. They saw him as Charity, someone from the struggling farm down the road, never understanding that he was the one person who truly understood the vineyard's heart. One afternoon, the sun was warm on our backs as we worked on fixing an irrigation line. The soil was thick with that rich, deep scent, the kind of smell you only get when you dig deep into the earth. I was beside Matthew, my hands dirty, my shirt soaked with sweat, but I felt alive in a way I didn't understand at the time. He was quiet, more so than usual, but when he spoke, his voice was like the land itself, calm and grounded. His hands were always covered in grease, and his clothes were worn, but his eyes were sharp, more than anyone I'd ever met. There was something about him, something steady and real that I hadn't realized I'd needed. "This is it, Jess," he said, his voice low as he pulled the irrigation pipe from the ground. "This is the heart of it all." He looked around, his gaze landing on the land, the vines stretching out as far as the eye could see. "This dirt, it has a secret." He said the words, carrying weight that only he seemed to understand. A fire deep inside it. I remember the way he looked at the earth, his hands covered in mud, but he was steady, like he knew something I didn't. "It gives our grapes their soul," he said, and I didn't question it. Back then, I thought he was just talking about the vines, about the quality of the grapes, the ones we would sell every harvest. But I felt it too. There was something sacred about it. I could feel it in the way the wind swept through the rows of vines, the way the sun kissed the leaves, and the way the earth underfoot seemed to hum alive and full of purpose. I looked over at Matthew, his face serious, focused. He wasn't just working, he was connecting with the land in a way no one else seemed to. And in that moment, I realized that he got it. He understood what the vineyard meant. More than that, he saw it as something that wasn't just about money, about wealth or power or even success. He saw it as something alive. And we were just kids, but we both knew the truth. My parents didn't. They saw the vineyard as a tool, something to use for their own ambitions. They never understood the legacy that was buried deep in the soil, the generations of hard work and love that had made the vineyard what it was. But Matthew did. As I sat in my truck, staring out at the remnants of the vineyard, I could almost hear my grandfather's voice, his words, echoing in my mind. The real legacy kids. He'd said, his voice thick with passion. It's not the money, it's not the house, it's the land. It was a legacy that was never about status. It was about connection. It was about understanding the heart of the earth beneath your feet. And now, here I was, alone in my truck, clutching a burned journal, watching the ruins of what had once been home. The vineyard wasn't just a place to me, it was everything. It was my memories, my family, my future. It was my soul. But now I felt like it was slipping through my fingers, turned to ash by the very people who should have protected it. I thought about Matthew, about how he was the only one who ever really understood it all. My parents didn't. They saw it as a brand, as something to manage. But Matthew, he saw it as a part of something bigger, something rooted in the earth, in history, and something real. And in that moment, I knew deep in my gut that Matthew was the one person who would understand the magnitude of what had been lost. I had no one else to turn to, but Matthew, he would see it. He would see what this land truly meant. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. I hadn't called him in years. Not since everything had changed. He'd gone on to become a tech mogul, a name whispered in business circles, while I had stayed here, stuck in a life that felt smaller with each passing day. I hesitated, my finger hovering over his name. Would he even remember me? Would he still care? I pressed the call button, the phone ringing twice, each one like a drum beat in my chest. The line clicked, and then, hello. His voice was deeper, more confident now, but there was warmth there, that same warmth I remembered. And suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. The phone rang twice, each one pulling me deeper into a whirlwind of emotions. I was about to hang up, convinced I was making a desperate mistake, but then his voice came through warm and familiar. Hello. Matthew's voice was different now, deeper, more confident, but that same warmth I remembered was there. My throat tightened, and for a moment I couldn't speak. But then I whispered, barely audible, "It's Jesse Miller." There was a brief pause, a stillness on the other end, and then a rush of recognition. Jesse. His voice cracked with surprise. "Oh my God, are you okay? Where are you?" It hit me all at once, like a flood breaking free from a dam. He wasn't just asking where I was. He was asking because he cared, because he wanted to help. In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone, not like I had thought. I'm at my parents' house," I choked out. "Everything's gone. The vineyard, everything." The words spilled out of me, raw and unfiltered. I could feel the tears beginning to rise, but I couldn't stop them. I told him everything. The fire, the sculpture, my parents' betrayal, the cold dismissal that had sent me away like I was nothing. He listened without interruption, and I could hear him taking sharp breaths, his rage controlled but unmistakable. When I finished, the silence on the other end of the line felt different. He wasn't just absorbing my pain, he was planning. "Stay where you are. Don't move," he said, his voice suddenly firm. "Are you in your truck?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yes, still here." "Good. There's a Four Seasons hotel about 15 minutes from you. I'm booking you the presidential suite right now. It'll be under your name. Go there. Order whatever you want from room service and get some sleep. I'm on my way." I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just a kind gesture. This was him taking immediate action. "On your way, Matthew. That's across the country." My mind was struggling to keep up, but his tone was unwavering. "My jet will be in the air in 30 minutes, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'll be there by morning. We'll sort this out together." And just like that, everything changed. In the span of a single phone call, I went from feeling abandoned, broken, and lost to having someone who cared enough to take action to stand by me. I drove to the hotel feeling like I was floating in a daze. I had never imagined that Matthew, the boy from the farm down the road, would turn out to be the one person who truly understood the weight of what had happened. When he arrived, he wasn't alone. With him was a woman tall and sharp-eyed, dressed in a suit that screamed authority. He introduced her as Rachel Vance, his chief of staff. There was no warmth in her smile, but there was a quiet respect in her eyes. The moment Matthew hugged me, I felt the weight of everything fall away just for a second. For the first time in days, I felt safe. Then his expression hardened. "First, we go back to the vineyard," he said, and the command in his voice left no room for argument. I didn't question it. I couldn't. We got into a sleek black SUV that had appeared out of nowhere, and the ride was silent, the weight of the situation settling heavily on my shoulders. Standing before the burnt remains of the vineyard, it hit me all over again. The grief, the loss, the weight of what I had just lost. But Matthew didn't look at it the way I did. He didn't see the destruction, he saw opportunity. "They have no idea what they threw away," he said, his voice quiet but intense. "This isn't a ruin, Jesse. This is a foundation." His words were like a spark. Something inside me began to shift. He wasn't looking at what was gone. He was looking at what could be. And then, as we stood there, Rachel spoke up, her voice calm but urgent. "I've been reviewing the property's public records with our legal team," she said. "There's something you need to know." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle before continuing. 10 years ago, your parents were facing a significant estate tax assessment. To mitigate it, their lawyers advised them to transfer any underperforming or worthless assets into a child's name to reduce the overall value of their estate. My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" I asked the words, barely a whisper. Matthew's face had already gone serious, and I could feel the air in my lungs growing heavy. "They saw the vineyard as a drain," Rachel continued. "To dodge a tax bill, Robert and Susan Miller signed over 100% of the deed for these 900 acres and all mineral and resource rights into your name. The transfer was irrevocable." She pulled out her phone, showing me a digital copy of the legal document. "They never told you," she added, "because they planned on having you sign it back when you were older. But they forgot. They gave you everything." The world tilted beneath me. My parents hadn't just abandoned me. They had unknowingly made me the sole owner of everything. The vineyard, the land, the resources beneath it. It was all mine. A week later, I sat in the polished boardroom, the air thick with the scent of expensive leather and freshly brewed coffee. My parents walked in like they were attending a business meeting, their faces a mask of arrogance. My father gave me a look, one that was a mix of pity and condescension, while my mother's gaze briefly flickered over my simple dress, a smirk playing at the corner of her lips. They thought they had me cornered. They thought they could intimidate me into handing everything back over like I was still the naive daughter they could control. But they had no idea what they were about to walk into. Their lawyer, a man in an impeccably tailored suit, launched into his opening statement. His voice boomed through the room, painting a picture of me as a manipulative liar, someone who had tricked her generous parents into signing away everything they had worked for. He spoke of their pain, their betrayal, their rightful claim to the property. The whole thing was a performance designed to break me down, to make me feel guilty for standing my ground. My father nodded along, playing the role of the concerned father. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, feigning distress. I sat there listening, but I didn't flinch. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. When he finished, the room fell silent, the tension so thick it felt like you could cut it with a knife. I just nodded to Rachel. She stood up, her presence commanding the room without her having to raise her voice. Her calm, measured tone sliced through the silence. "Thank you for that creative piece of fiction," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "Now let's discuss reality." She clicked a button on the remote, and the large screen behind her flickered to life. It wasn't the diagram of oil deposits they had expected. No, it was something else. A stunning architectural rendering of a massive futuristic campus. "This," Rachel said, "is the Miller Legacy Project. It's a $4 billion green data center and sustainable winery fully funded by Nexus Terra and powered by a unique geothermal source located on the property." My parents' faces drained of color, their smug confidence wavering for the first time. They had no idea what they had just walked into. "What is this?" My father stammered, his voice betraying his confusion. Rachel advanced the slide, revealing a corporate hierarchy chart. At the top, under the title of Founder and Chief Executive Officer, was my name, Jessica Miller. As the sole legal owner of the land and all its resource rights, Rachel continued, "Miss Miller has entered into a partnership with Nexus Terra to develop her property." My father's expression faltered, his eyes narrowing as he tried to process what was happening. Then Rachel clicked again, and there it was, a high-resolution scan of a legal document, a document that my father himself had signed. "And this," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "is the irrevocable deed of transfer signed by you, Mr. Miller, 10 years ago. You signed it yourself." The room went dead silent. My father's face went pale. My mother looked as if she might pass out. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had underestimated the power they had given me, the very power they had tried to suppress for years. The truth had landed not with a shout, but with the quiet finality of a hammer striking an anvil. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. Months passed, and I stood on a hill overlooking what was once a field of ashes. The rhythmic sound of construction had replaced the silence of devastation, the hum of machines echoing through the land where memories had once been. Below me, the foundations of the data center were being laid sturdy and strong, and on the ridge where I stood, The first vines of the new vineyard were taking root, their green tendrils reaching toward the sky. It felt surreal, like I was living in a dream I never thought I'd have. My grandfather's journal sat on the passenger seat of my truck, its pages filled with his dreams for this land. His legacy was no longer something trapped in the past, buried under layers of greed and false pretenses. It had become something alive, something real, something that had withstood everything that had tried to destroy it. The fire had been horrific. There was no denying that. It had taken everything I had ever known. But in the end, it had burned away the falsehoods, the lies, the control that my parents had placed on this land and on me. What was left was something purer, something truer. The fire had cleared the way for something new, something authentic. I could finally breathe again. I could finally stand here knowing that the vineyard, this land, was mine. It wasn't just a property. It wasn't just a business venture. It was a part of me, a part of who I was and who I was meant to be. And now, I wasn't just a daughter or a casualty of my parents' ambitions. I was the creator of a new legacy, one that honored the soil and the spirit of this land. As the sun began to set behind the ridge, casting a warm glow over the construction site, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The future was no longer uncertain. I had reclaimed it. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't lost. I had found my place again right here where it all began. The fire had taken much, but it had also given me something I would never trade. It had burned away the past and cleared the path for something better, something real. And in that moment, standing on the hill with the wind in my hair and the land stretching out before me, I knew that this was only the beginning. Sometimes it takes losing everything to find out what truly matters. Family, ambition, legacy, they all have different meanings for different people. But at the end of the day, it's about reclaiming your own path, defining your own future. We all have moments when we must rise from the ashes and rebuild. If you've ever faced something that made you question everything, remember that your story isn't over. It's just beginning. If you found something in this journey that resonated with you, feel free to subscribe, and share your thoughts. Let's keep pushing forward together.